who runs the pro-Darwin, anti-religion blog Pharyngula, says science eroded his faith as well.
I never hated religion. I found religion quite comfortable, and I liked the people in it. What led to the atheism was learning more about science, learning more about the natural world, and seeing these horrible conflicts with religion.
And it was then, when I discovered evolution, when I discovered Darwinism, that I realized there's this magnificently elegant, stunningly elegant explanation, which I didn't quite understand to begin with. When I did understand it, then that finally killed off my remaining religious faith.
After hearing these stories, I was not surprised to discover that most evolutionary biologists share Professor Dawkins' views. It appears Darwinism does lead to atheism, despite what Eugenie Scott would have us believe.
And if you separate out the ethical message from religion, what have you got left? You got a bunch of fairy tales, right?
I think that God is about as unlikely as fairies, angels, hobgoblins, etc.
Religion, I mean, it's just fantasy, basically. It's completely empty of any explanatory content. And it's evil as well.
Half the people in this country think that drugs is what you have to regulate to make us safer, and half the people think guns, that's what you got to regulate to make us safer. But I always think if you're going to regulate one thing that has the most potential to cause death and destruction, religion. You got to start with religion, and
Religion is an idea that gives some people comfort, and we don't want to take it away from them. It's like knitting. People like to knit. You know, we're not going to take their knitting needles away. We're not going to take away their churches. But what we have to do is get it to a place where religion is treated at the level it should be treated. That is, something fun that people get together and do on the weekend and really doesn't affect their life as much as it has been so far.
So, what would the world look like if Dr. Myers got his wish?
Greater science literacy, which is going to lead to the erosion of religion. And then we'll get this nice positive feedback mechanism going, where as religion slowly fades away, we get more and more science to replace it. And that will displace more and more religion, which will allow more and more science in. And we'll eventually get to that point where religion has taken that appropriate place as a side dish rather than the main course.
But will eradicating religion really lead to a modern utopia? Let me try to imagine that, and let's let history be our guide.
In part, I think Matthew Arnold put his hands on it when he spoke about the withdrawal of faith. There is a connection between a society that has at least a minimal commitment to certain kinds of transcendental values and what human beings permit themselves to do one to the other.
That got me thinking, what other societies have used Darwinism to trump all other authorities, including religion? As a Jew, my mind leapt to one regime in particular.
The connection between Hitler and Darwin is, of course, historically a difficult connection because they were separated by a good many years. One was English, one was German. Nonetheless, if you open Mein Kampf and read it, especially if you can read it in German, the correspondence between Darwinian ideas and Nazi ideas just leaps from the page. Of course, you have to add every historical caution. Not everyone who read Darwin became a Nazi. Obviously not. No one is making that case. Darwinism is not a sufficient condition for a phenomenon like Nazism, but I think it's certainly a necessary one.
This was a connection I had to explore personally.
American officers arrive at a Nazi institution seized by First Army troops. Under the guise of an insane asylum, this has been the headquarters for the systematic murder of...
So what is this place?
During the Second World War, 15,000 people were killed here.
Why were they killed?
They were killed because they were people with handicaps,
Why kill them? What's the point of killing them?
People who were not able to work, people who were not able to live by themselves, that they were useless eaters.
Useless eaters.
And life unworthy of living. This idea grew up in the 20s. So long before National Socialism, biologists, anthropologists, they thought that maybe mankind could, or the government could interfere into the growth of the population.
I see.
And they had the utopia that they would have a society without illness and without handicap.
Alles Lebensschwache geht in der Natur unfehlbar zugrunde. Wir Menschen haben gegen dieses Gesetz der natürlichen Auslese in den letzten Jahrzehnten furchtbar gesündigt. Wir haben unwertes Leben nicht nur erhalten, wir haben ihm auch Vermehrung gewährt. Die Nachkommen dieser Kranken sahen so aus, die tiefer stehen als jedes Tier.
So this was a Darwinian concept?
Yes.
And also a Malthusian concept, very much Malthusian.
Malthusian?
Thomas Malthus, who said that there was a shortage of resources, English philosopher, so there was a shortage.
Yes, but the Nazis, they relied on Darwin.
They relied on Darwin?
Yes, Darwin and German scientists.
Patients were led down this hallway to Nazi doctors who decided who would live and who would die.
They were accompanied by 15 nurses.
Nurses, yes.
Nurses, male and female nurses.
So nurses were helping lead them to their doom.
Yes.
So were the prisoners told they were taking a shower?
Yes, they were taking a shower, and here was 1 or 2 showers.
So how many people were brought into this room?
60 to 70.
So what is this?
This is the dissection table.
Do you ever think to yourself, the sane ones were the ones lying here having their brains removed? The insane one was Dr. Gorgas and all the other people
No,
did?
no, I don't think that, because I think those people who killed here, they were very sane, because they had their purposes.
They had purposes?
Yes. I don't think they were insane. They had 2 crematory ovens.
I see.
And they killed about 70 people.
A day.
So a day, so they had...
That's barely enough time.
And they only killed from Monday to Friday. So...
Because the people who were doing the killing needed to have the weekend off. If you met Dr. Gorgas today, what would you say to him?
I don't know. I don't think that it's my role to tell him something.
It's difficult to describe how it felt to walk through such a haunting place, to know that these cold stone and tile walls were the last things the victims of Hadamar ever saw. I wanted to explore this connection further, so I met with the author of From Darwin to Hitler, Dr. Richard Weikart.
Hitler and many of the physicians that carried out this program were very fanatical Darwinists, and particularly they wanted to apply Darwinism to society.
Was wir uns unter der deutschen Jugend der Zukunft wünschen, ist etwas anderes, als was die Vergangenheit sich gewünscht hat. Wir müssen einen neuen Menschen, auf das unser Volk nicht an den typischen Degenerationserscheinungen dieser neuen Zeit runde geht.
Many of these people in the 19-teens, 1920s, who were putting forward some of these ideas about racism were considered the leading scientists. These were Darwinists who were taken seriously by fellow academics. It's not to say that all academics believed it.
These leading academics, were there any of them who were Americans?
There were plenty of Americans who were saying similar kinds of things.
Not only were Americans saying such things, they were pioneers in this fledgling science known as eugenics. They thought they could help evolution along by sterilizing the so-called feeble-minded, and prohibiting them from getting married.
Physicians who are aware of the history of 20th century American medicine harbor some bad feelings towards Darwinists because of eugenics. And eugenics, which was an attempt to breed human beings, it was the darkest chapter of American medicine ever. There were 50,000 people involuntarily sterilized.